Hi, welcome to this month's edition of the Centered on Excellence webinar series for the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Central Great Lakes chapter. Today, we're going to be focusing on entering the Emmys, frequently asked questions on what to do and what's new in 2022. I'm Chapter President Dan Spieler here in Indianapolis, along with our Executive Director and longtime awards administrator, Bob Hammer in Cleveland. So Bob, let's start with what's new in 2022. We've got a few new categories. Tell everybody a little bit first about how these categories get decided and how we learn about the new categories that are available from the national organization.
Well, every year we put together a national committee that works for all 19 chapters. And we put together a manual that pretty well defines what the menu of categories we can select from. Not all chapters offer all categories, as many of them are sometimes localized. But in our call for entry, we've gone through and we've added the categories that we think our members would like. Obviously, if there's something you would like to see, just send me a note. We'll put it in consideration for the upcoming year.
Here's this year's call for entry right here. You can find it at GreatLakesEmmys.tv. Just click on Get Call for Entry. So we've got a few of those new categories to show everyone, including Sports Excellence. This is a new category this year that goes along with Overall Excellence, News Excellence, and Community Service. One of the really keystone pillar awards of the entire gala. This is going to be awarded to the individual or department most responsible for excellence in the overall operations of a TV station sports department, a regional sports network, sports franchise, or online sports media outlet. And Bob, this is going to offer a new category for sports departments to really be able to be recognized for excellence department-wide.
But this ties into the overall excellence, which we brought out about 10 years ago. The overall excellence covers, I'm going to say, stations and actually sporting companies and individuals that way. And this sports excellence really takes it down to more, I'm going to say, back up here, to key off of the news excellence that we offer. So we know that quite often sports department will operate slightly different than a news department.
Sure.
So this gives them the chance to really shine.
Interactive video is another new category this year for excellence in video content focused on a single topic using digital platforms like the web, mobile phones, social media, tablets, smart TVs to allow the audience to actively participate in the content. And obviously, Bob, with the changing times, new digital platforms, this is a category that a lot of people had been wondering about.
This category has been very difficult. It's growing year by year. We keep changing it slightly, trying to fine tune it to get it to come through. But it is about interactive. A new category that we added this year is 105 interactive video micro. That we're allowing non-traditional broadcast formats. Now we do indicate Instagram or TikTok. Understand, this is not for Instagram or TikTok videos that you normally think of. This is using the platform to create an interactive video. And that doesn't mean the number of likes or the number of shares. That means you are actually interacting with your participants.
And a lot of people are doing that, obviously, now this day and age. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Another new category, diversity, equity, and inclusion, being offered by the national organization and to the chapters as well for excellence in news or journalistic coverage focused on topics including racism, discrimination, inequity, marginalized communities, and similar social injustices, notably focused on efforts to raise awareness or affect positive change. This is being offered in category 315, obviously as a story category, and also in the programming category 512. For programming focused on those same topics, which have obviously been top of mind. Bob, obviously a number of new categories here. I know the video journalist and video essay categories are also something that we've taken a close look at in recent years in terms of the rules involved.
Well, the video journalist and video essay have been problematic in that they are difficult to monitor for double dipping. And the double dipping part of it refers to entering the same content in multiple categories. While these do state that you cannot enter this particular entry in any other craft category, quite often people will put it up into a news category or something of that nature. And what we say is, yeah, since it can't be part of any other craft category, because you are in effect doing all the jobs on video essay and video journalist, that these are pretty much for single entrants. We're talking about one person doing all the work. And by allowing them to enter in any other thing, well, that implies that the same content can be entered in a news content category as a producer. But yet, a producer is not listed in the description right now
Right.
in these categories. Nor are producers really permitted to enter crafts, period. We only have two examples of that: is the news producer and sports producer in craft, but otherwise producers are not allowed in craft. So
Always
this
important.
the MMJ could also enter in a news category as a producer, as they fulfill the duties of that producer, but in addition to all the other associated crafts. So we have to say, how is this not allowing a double dip as they change their
True.
role? However, they did do it all. So we're
Oh,
looking at that. It's probably be fine tuned again next year.
okay. Always important to go over those rules.
Yeah.
We've got them all there in the call for entry. And again, you can find a link to that at Great Lakes Emmys.tv. We've got some frequently asked questions and some questions that have come in that people ask from time to time about the entry process. So, Bob, let's look at some of those today as well as we talk about some of those frequently asked questions you get. Do I have to be a member to submit an entry?
Well, I went through and picked out, I thought, a handful of the most common ones.
Yeah,
No, you don't. You do not have to be a member to submit an entry or be listed on an entry. We do accept non-member entries. The key difference of that is the financial advantages to becoming a member, and you actually save money on one entry. If you're doing more than one, then you save a whole bunch of money. I'm not against taking your money if you want to give it to me. But I would prefer you become a member,
yeah,
become involved in our group, and actually participate in what we do.
absolutely. Whose name
Um,
should go on the entry? Another question that you sometimes get.
um, well, it is the person that's most responsible for creating the entry, and consider that the contribution of each person that touched the entry and whether they had a significant role in creating that entry. And ancillary persons should really not be listed on the entry. We're looking for who is really responsible for putting that entry together. Typically, it's always the producer.
Kind of ties in with this next question that you sometimes get. Should my news director or executive producer's name go on every entry, or are there some circumstances where that applies more than others?
Well, the news director or executive producer both raise red flags every time that role pops up on an entry, because that's really not a role. That is a title, and we want to know, what did you do on the entry. And so if a story comes in, well, I was the news director on the entry. How I don't understand how that works. Your role is a producer or director, photographer, editor, writer, some aspect of that name, that mention. So what we want to know is who had hands on,
Yeah.
not who was a manager,
And
not
that may
who signed
apply
the check.
more in situations involving large orchestrated team coverage of a major event that a news director certainly has their hands on more so perhaps than one single story or one single entry that you're looking at. Here's a question that came in from someone in the chapter. If I submit work that I
Mhm.
made while working at my station, can I also submit work that I created on a freelance basis? Didn't know if I would need to have two memberships, they asked.
Well, chapters will recognize memberships back and forth between each other as long as you still have most of your membership remaining.
Well, in
For
this
con-
case, I think they're asking if they worked at two different places within the
oh,
region.
okay,
Yeah,
you're probably right on that. I'll back up then.
Yeah.
No, your membership is a personal item. It's not related to the station. Uh, when you go into your create your account, that account is yours. It does not belong to any employer, and you have complete control over what you submit on that. Now, if you're working at station A and you decide to switch over to station B sometime later in the year, you can submit work from both stations, or you can submit freelance work, and that's quite often the case too. And you would indicate on the entry what producing entity was involved in creating that entry. Obviously, you don't want to give the station credit for something you did freelance, nor do you want to take freelance credit for something your station actually produced.
And a similar question here, and maybe speaking to what you were getting at there, what if
Oh,
I change jobs? Can I submit work from both employers? Kind of depends. Some people move from one region to the other. You were alluding to that as well. And that can be an issue that's popped up for some people.
well, I mean, just the phone call I had this morning that the entrant was moving to Indianapolis from Boston, and they still have work from Boston they wanted to submit, and they have work from Indianapolis they want to submit. Well, in that case, the Boston entries go into the Boston New England chapter. The Indianapolis entries would go into the Great Lakes chapter. Uh,
Sure. Can you tell me where to submit my content? Because it got picked up by a lot of stations around the country. This is a pretty applicable question these days because people will perform some work. It airs on their station, but it also ends up airing on a regional cable network that their company owns or some other entity that's connected with their company. How do we look at those situations?
well, I'm going to break this into two questions here. Can you tell me where to submit my content? Technically, no, I really can't tell you because I don't know where to. I can guide you along if you have questions. I don't have a crystal ball to be able to tell you where you're going to be to win. I recently had a person contact me and said, "We really think that this ought to be in historical uh, programming," and we talked about it. I said, "Well, really, no, it's really a news special. It's not an historical program. There's not a lot of research. There's not a lot of black and white photographs. I mean, it's not. Yes, it is something that happened, but it's very contemporary. So therefore, it needs to be in a different category. And we do review all of the entries that come in to try to ascertain that they are in the correct category. Now, back to the picked up by lots of stations around the country. We no longer have the 50% rule on the number of markets due to content being streamed 24 hours a day all over the world. You can thank YouTube and other places like that for that kind of work. But what the key comes down to this: was your content intended for, and the primary interest of the content to their regional audience? So if not, then you really should consider going into the national awards. And this is where you want to take your program, and if it's something to do with, I'm going to say, food banks in Indianapolis and Fort Wayne and Indiana, or some, in our region of Erie, Pennsylvania through northern Ohio and most of Indiana, that's of interest to our region. If it's something that you went to Costa Rica or you went to the Olympics and you're filing stories back, unless you're really working a local angle of how our region works, then those entries really are not of regional interest and probably should not be entered.
Okay. Well, can anyone qualify to be listed as a producer on the entry, and how is that defined? You got into that a little bit when it comes to the double dipping.
Oh,
This is something people have asked about. Can get kind of complicated.
it's a little complicated because everybody wants to call themselves a producer. In the call for entry, the very back, page 32, we've added a glossary. I don't know, did you capture that? That defines what a producer is. And we look at the producer, uh, as I look at it here, that you're an overseer of the content, determine the overall tone, structure, look, sound, mission. You make a, there it is. And you make a strategic editorial decisions. Are you identifying the interview subjects, shoot locations, scheduling, writing? That is what a producer does. Uh, Showing up on the day of and standing behind the camera is not necessarily being a producer. A producer puts all these things together to package it up.
That's helpful info to have there in the call for entries now. And again, that's on page 33. If anyone wants to see that on this year's call for entries to be able to go over that information, that's really helpful, Bob. Thanks.
Adding the glossary, we started that last year, and we've expanded it this year.
Yeah,
Really, if you're confused about what something means, go back to that glossary,
great.
and 98% of the time you're going to find what it is, a better explanation. If not, contact me.
Here's another question you get sometimes. Can I get an extension to enter? We had a family emergency right at the deadline.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to you that you had a family emergency right at the deadline.
I guess that's why we put a
We,
2 month window on
we
this process, right?
we have 8 weeks for you to enter.
Right.
And I mean, the old line, the fact that you waited until the very last minute, I get a little hard nosed about this, but the fact that you waited to the very last minute when you had 8 weeks to get the job done is not my fault. And so, therefore, no, you don't get an extension. Those deadlines are firm. And the reason for that, in order to make our awards ceremony in June, everything is back timed all the way to our entry deadlines.
The judging process, all of it. It gets sent out to other chapters to judge. All of that
And
on a timeline. Yeah.
well, and I say, if you've ever judged another chapter, which I encourage everybody to do, that you get an idea of the amount of volume of judging. I recruit 700 to 800 judges a year, and I ask you judge at least one. Judge two would be nice, but I really don't need you to judge 10. And but that way you get involved to it. And I'm going to say too, particularly for the newer people in the business, um, we do ask that you have 2 years experience in the discipline that you're judging. So if you're judging news, we want you to have worked 2 years in news. And to do that, uh, pick a category that interests you, and you get to see other work from around the country
Yeah.
and compare, and you learn. Now, as a news reporters, I really encourage them to judge. You don't know how many story ideas you can pick up
Hmm.
by seeing
Absolutely.
what's going on in another market.
It's a great way to get involved, great way to learn about everything that's happening in the business and see what award-winning work people are doing in other chapters. Bob, thank you so much. It's been great to have you here to look at entering the Emmys today. Another way to get involved, well, Facebook Live here over the next few months. We plan to be back for more of these webinars. We did one last month. We're hoping to get into producing and writing this month. We had to change things up a little bit, had a couple of cancellations here last minute with people busy with various things around the holidays. So, Bob, appreciate your time today to answer these questions. We're going to focus next month on earning an Emmy, superb storytelling and journalism that matters. We also plan to discuss in February covering our communities, the importance of inclusion and diversity. In March, surviving and thriving, making TV magic in the midst of the pandemic. And in April, surviving and thriving, preparing for your first job or your next job. Bob, thank you so much. And thank you at home for watching the Centered on Excellence webinar series from the Central Great Lakes chapter. Take care.
Thank you.